if you want to interject with some questions, because with this panel, there's such a star-studded panel. I am assuming we're going to get some questions like we did before. So it's okay to interject a couple of times with questions with some legs to them.
Great. I have a bunch of questions waiting for us. So
I see that we already have a ton. I see. Okay.
And where are we? We're live on, is it Facebook Live? And is there anywhere else that we are?
People had to register. So we've got the registrants. And then we shoot over to Facebook Live, and we get a lot of people on Facebook Live.
Gotcha.
Okay. Everyone, we are actually going live right now. So just give me one moment. Welcome, everyone. Sorry to already started the process.
Dr. Caudle, we also, just so you know, we also record this, so we replay it, and I also put it out to my mailing list, just so you know.
That's excellent.
All right. We are going live. Everyone, welcome to our 4th Virtual Doctors Night Out. I would like to introduce Dr. Kellyann Petrucci, our host. Thank you.
Are we live on Facebook?
We are live.
Terrific. Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Doctors Night Out. Tonight we have an amazing panel for you, and any doctor that you see on Doctors Night Out, you know that these are doctors that I know, I love, I trust. These are doctors that are committed to integrity, to growth, and authenticity. You will find that these are the true seekers out there. They work really hard to give you information in your lives every day. Tonight's focus is going to be on the ripple effect of COVID-19, meaning what's the state of the union today, and what's going to be the impact on our body and on our lives when all the dust settles, because it will. There will be a tomorrow where we're all looking back and we're talking about this. What are we going to be talking about? What are we going to learn from all this? It's kind of interesting when you're in the middle of all of this to just realize at some point there's going to be a discussion about everything we learned. So tonight's star-studded panel, and I do mean star-studded, Dr. Jen Caudle, Dr. Taz, Dr. Mansour, Dr. Pedre, welcome to Doctors Night Out. We're so happy to have you tonight. And I have to say, your minds are going to be blown tonight, because we're going to talk about a lot of different things. And I know some people have said to me, Dr. Kellyann, we are webinared out. We have seen so much. Every time we turn around in our inbox, there's another webinar. So what my goal here is tonight, this is my way of giving back and trying to make a difference in people's lives, because we're all going through so much. And so the intention here is to give you information that is going to enlighten you and realize that there are positives in this. Once you know the fact and once you see, I promise you that we are all going to grow and somehow be better for all of this. So let's start with Dr. Jen Caudle. Dr. Jen Caudle is a board-certified family medicine physician, an associate professor in the Department of Family Medicine at Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine. She appears, and by the way, so I always kind of build a connective tissue between all of the guests. She is everywhere. She is everywhere. And I know people who produce her that say that she is just their absolute favorite guest. She is an absolute dynamo. She appears regular on air at shows like the Today Show, the Dr. Oz Show, CNN, Fox News, Rachel Ray Show, Steve Harvey, Fox 29 News, PBS, and many others. She's had her health articles everywhere, CNN, Opinion, DrOz.com, ABC News. She's been quoted in all kinds of magazines, USA Today. So she is a true rock star. Welcome, Dr. Caudle. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Dr. Taz. So Dr. Taz, a friend of mine for a while. So, she's one of those people that is out there doing it superwoman style. She has the kind of energy that lights the room up, and she is all about giving. That's what you're going to find with a lot of the guests that come on here. She's a board-certified integrative medicine physician and wellness expert who gained national recognition as a best-selling author of books like What Doctors Eat, The 21-Day Belly Fix, and my favorite, Superwoman RX. She has an integrative approach with Eastern medical wisdom with modern science, along with her unique power type discovery. And she's been on all kinds of shows as well. The Today Show, Dr. Oz, Live with Kelly and Ryan, and she's PBS. She had a special, Superwoman RX. She's the host of a radio show that I want everyone to tune into, the Dr. Taz Show, Superwoman Wellness, which garners about 50,000 monthly downloads. She's dubbed as a superwoman herself. She's committed to empowering women, so on and so forth. She is just downright amazing. Dr. Mansour Muhammad, PhD, specialized honors in molecular genetics. Okay, brainiac. Dr. Mansour is the president and CSO of the DNA company, a company that I stand behind. He does comprehensive functional genomics testing and consulting, and industry first. It's a big deal. Individually customized supplements he does under Dr. Mansour's leadership. The DNA company has pioneered the term fluency in the language of DNA and is revolutionizing the genomic testing towards optimized health. That is for sure. He's widely regarded as a pioneer in medical genomics and has been the recipient of multiple academic and industry awards. He's also the holder of several patents in general fields of molecular diagnostics and genomics research, and is one of the most sought after national and international conference speakers. Goes on and on. He's absolutely incredible. You're going to be absolutely peeled at what he says. Dr. Vincent Pedre. So this is my good friend, and most of the people that are on here, Dr. Mansour, how many times have we broken bread? I mean, so Dr. Pedre and I have broken bread many times. He is a functional medicine doctor in Manhattan, and it's where I trust anyone that I know and love, and I certainly go to him for medical information whenever I need it. He is always on the cutting edge of science-based medicine and nutrition. So happy to have him. So Dr. Pedre is medical director of the Pedre Integrative Health and president of Dr. Pedre Wellness. He's a board certified internist in a private practice in New York City since 2004. His philosophy and practices are a blend of both Western and Eastern medical traditions. He's a clinical instructor in the medicine in the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, as well as a certified yoga and medical acupuncture. He has a unique combination of medicine, and he does functional systems, his holistic understanding. He just has done so many different things. He's known as the gut doctor, by the way, because he is really foraging the whole gut biome that we keep hearing about. He's known as the guy, right? He's known as the guy. So he's just done so many. He's been on the Martha Stewart show, the top medical screening test. He's been on Sirius radio show, Gary Knowles, on and on and on. All of these people, as you can see, I'm so proud to have them on. They're all stars, but let's get to it now. So Dr. Caudle, I'd like to start with you. So people have so many questions, and gosh, I keep getting asked the same thing. And one of the most common questions I get is, how is this different than the typical flu? Because when this first started coming out, everyone kept saying, it's just the flu, it's just the flu. Is it? If not, how's it different?
It's not just the common flu. And first of all, we've learned so much over the last few months. I think one of the things that's difficult with this virus is the fact that it's a novel virus, which means it's new. We've never seen it before. And that's also one of the reasons why the information that we're getting and we're giving keeps changing. So if people out there feel frustrated or confused, like one time we were calling it the flu and now we're not, it's because now we're simply learning more. But it is not the flu. It's not, there's some overlapping details, but honestly, coronavirus is more serious. The death rate is higher. Exactly how much higher, I think we still need to wait to see, because it really depends on how many people are tested and how much penetrance we have overall to really determine that. But the death rate from the flu, for example, is 0.1%. We already know that coronavirus is much higher than that. Where on the scale it is, like I said, we have to wait and see. We also know that so one of the things that's relatively similar is that the symptoms can overlap a little bit, but not entirely, as we've started to learn as time has gone by. Initially, we were saying that the classic symptoms were fever, cough, and shortness of breath. But as time has gone by, we've learned that you can get muscle aches, which you get with the flu. Obviously, the fever you get with the flu. People get really tired, but now we're also hearing about symptoms like diarrhea, eye irritation, and other symptoms as well. So, the list goes on and on, but the long and the short of it is, this is not the flu. In many cases, this is more serious in some ways. This is something we have to, this is a force to be reckoned with, absolutely.
And what are people considered to be most contagious? So for example, if I think I've had the coronavirus, I've had some of these symptoms, and I think, you know what, they weren't really severe, but I'm pretty sure I had it. If those symptoms pass, can I just go on with my life? And is there a point in time where you're the most contagious?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So a lot of that would depend on, number one, if you were using you or anyone else as an example, right? Would depend on if that person actually had coronavirus, right? Because this is also allergy season. As a family doctor, I have a number of my patients calling me up saying, I've got this cough and this stuffy nose. Could it be coronavirus? So we're kind of having to sift through whether it's coronavirus or flu or allergies or this or that. But assuming that one has coronavirus, there is a highly contagious point, and that is when we have symptoms. That's when we tend to be the most contagious. Now, remember, it can take up to 2 weeks for symptoms to develop in someone who's been exposed, but usually it's around that 5-day mark of exposure that they start to develop symptoms. But we also know, however, that you can actually transmit the disease before you even develop the symptoms. That's this asymptomatic spread that we keep hearing about. So you don't even have to have symptoms to be able to spread it to others. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a mishmash, but the idea is certainly when we have symptoms, we are contagious.
I want to add a little bit to that.
Yeah, please do, Dr. Pedre.
Can I add a couple of things?
Please do.
Just to put it in perspective, like the death rate now in the US is lingering around 1.3%. And that's more than an order of magnitude, 10 times more than the flu. Just for people to imagine, this is in the US and also kind of similar to the death rate in China. So it's about 10 times more. It's been much deadlier if you look at the death rates in Italy, but we still have to know, how many people are going to get this. But I did want to point out, because I've been just in the front line with patients and also talking to other practitioners and seeing what's coming in the research, some very unique symptoms of this virus, because there can be crossovers with the flu. But here's a really unique symptom that you have to look out for: loss of sense of smell. And it could be loss of sense of smell with no fever. And that might be the first sign that you have this virus. Actually, a friend of mine who's a doctor, an ENT in London, that was his symptom. And he got tested because he's in the National Health Service and he had to get tested positive for coronavirus, had very low-grade fevers, but loss of smell was like #1 symptom, and then some muscle aches. And I just had another patient, very similar symptom. And I wanted to point out, last thing, that now we're seeing that maybe about 30 to 48% of the cases of coronavirus are going to present with GI symptoms because there are receptors for coronavirus in the stomach and the duodenum. And what they are finding in studies is that people are testing positive in the stool 12 days after their symptoms end. So we still have to answer, that question you asked, how long are you contagious for? Could it be that this SARS-CoV-2, as this coronavirus is known that causes COVID-19, could it be that it's more contagious because it also is contagious through a fecal oral route, and that it could also continue to be contagious after the person resolves their symptoms? Those are things that I think still need to be looked at. And all we know now is that it is shed in the stool, that it does infect the stomach, and it might even present with some nausea for a person. So I think these are things to really think about and for people to be aware of, because its spectrum of the way it can present is super wide. And yes, there are crossovers with the flu, but there are also things that are very unique in the way this virus presents that it's not typical for the flu.
And we keep learning and learning more and more. But here's another question for you, Dr. Caudle. If we feel like we have symptoms, do we go to the ER?
No.
What do we do?
No, you want to call your doctor first, okay? And if you don't have a doctor, there are some people that don't have a primary care provider. You want to call your Department of Public Health. Actually, and in many cities, let me start over. In many cities, in addition to public health departments, there are also hotlines. So hospital systems often in many areas actually have hotlines where you can literally talk to someone, whether it's your doctor, whether it's an operator on the hotline with the public health department. You can go through your symptoms and you can figure out, you can be what we call risk stratified to figure out how likely or how concerned are we about you having coronavirus. Then it can be determined whether you need testing, how you get that, et cetera. That's very important rather than going into an ER or an urgent care, or even your doctor's office, just showing up. Because if you were to have coronavirus and you show up, you could potentially expose and infect other people. So that's why we want you to call ahead first and get the guidance from the healthcare professionals, and then determine where you need to go.
Answer this question for me. One second, Dr. Pedro. Answer this question for me once and for all. Dr. Caudle, do the masks and gloves work?
What I would say, you see me kind of saying, because right now we are in the midst of a sort of a limbo period. For months, we've been saying that the general population that are asymptomatic should not be wearing masks. I said it on TV, left and right, up and down. It's the CDC guidance, also World Health Organization, even up until yesterday, even likely today. We've just found out that the CDC is discussing the possibility of changing that guidance. One of the reasons why is because of this asymptomatic spread, meaning we're wondering if now a larger number of people in our population are spreading it asymptomatically than we initially thought. So the idea would be, if more people wore masks, maybe we would have a chance to keep those particles. Because remember, even though there are questions about coronavirus, what we do know is that it's primarily spread by person-to-person contact and contact through upper respiratory droplets. We do know that masks keep droplets to yourself. That's what a mask does. It doesn't keep you from getting someone else's sickness. It keeps them from giving it to you, okay? A mask keeps our germs inside. That's what we want to do. So not to be long-winded about this, Kellyann, but the idea is they're re-looking at this because now we know there's a lot of asymptomatic spread, and you might not even know that you're sick when you are. And thus, maybe a mask might actually be helpful. There are a couple of caveats. I did 4 news segments today, and one of the things I said in literally every single one of them was, the caveats are, we can't take away from healthcare providers. So when we talk about masks, the general public should not be wearing N95s. Surgical masks would be ideal, but we don't even have enough of those for healthcare workers, right? And so this thought is that maybe even just a bandana or cloth might be better than nothing. Where do I stand on this issue is, I've kind of had to come to the realization with coronavirus that literally our data and the information changes almost hourly. And at this point, if we think it might even help just a little bit, that little bit would be welcome. But I'll tell you this, I am anxiously awaiting the CDC guidance. I can't wait to hear what they decide.
And I have one final question that I have to ask you that people are really curious about. Do cleaning products get rid of all of this? Like, what products?
Yeah, great question. Oh, that's an excellent question. I do daily videos on my Facebook page about, questions people ask. And this is definitely one of them. So yes, if you look on the back of your Lysol can, I did a video on this like maybe about a month ago. If you look on the back of Lysol or Clorox, you'll see a number of viruses and bacteria that it prevents, or rather kills. Coronavirus is listed. However, initially, what Lysol and many other products were saying was, look, it kills many coronaviruses. We can't say it kills this one because we haven't tested this one specifically. Yeah. However, in the last few weeks, new sort of emergent information has come out from the Environmental Protection Agency. If you go to EPA.gov or American Chemistry, I believe it's .gov or .com. Don't quote me on the .gov or .com. It's called American Chemistry. A lot of products have actually gotten like an emergency sort of verification that yes, they would be protective and would kill coronavirus based on their ability to kill other viruses and bacteria. Wow. So if you go to these websites, EPA.gov or AmericanChemistry.gov or .com, you'll find a whole list of Clorox, Lysol, all this stuff, and you can literally print the list out and take it to your grocery store and be confident that those products are going to kill coronavirus. Good question.
Good to know. Good to know. This is very useful information. Dr. Mansour, there's got to be some kind of genetic something going on here. Is there a link between the coronavirus and people who have poor outcomes?
Excellent question. The first thing, just to clarify, because a lot of folks, including clinicians, have been asking me about this. The virus binds and enters the human cell via the ACE2 receptor. First things first, this is not the ACE1 receptor that everyone is more familiar with. When you take an ACE inhibitor, you're addressing the ACE1 pathway, not the ACE2 pathways. They're interrelated, but just to be clear, the ACE2 receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme receptor, that the virus enters through into the human body, that gene and the receptor that it encodes is on the X chromosome, the main ACE1 gene, which is what we talk about.
So it's like a highway. So
It's a highway.
all this stuff has to go on a highway and has to get stuck somewhere.
And here are two things that we need
Right?
to know. Absolutely. The current SARS-CoV-2 is binding to that ACE2 receptor with incredible accuracy and tenacity, you might say. In other words, the specificity of this particular SARS-CoV-2, because by the way, other coronaviruses, the SARS, the original SARS of 18 years ago, also entered the human body via the ACE2. This is not as though it wasn't there before. But this particular SARS-CoV-2, the new novel coronavirus, is entering the human cell with a degree of specificity far, far more than previous coronaviruses. Number one. Number two, and I'm going to come to answer your question now, we need to also know that this virus, when it hijacks the human cell, it is shedding at rates far more than previous viruses. In fact, some of the studies coming out of Dr. Neil Chade's lab at the NIH shows that this virus, when it enters the human cell and when it hijacks the machinery of the human cell to replicate, it's replicating at 1,000 times more than previous coronaviruses. And this is really cutting edge work coming out of Dr. Neil Chade's lab at the US National Institutes of Health. So to add to Dr. Caudle's, when she was responding, especially in that what we call the asymptomatic mode, that where you're not symptomatic, but your spitules, your sputum has viruses or could have viruses in it when you're not, when you're infected, the amount of viral particles, this is what is really making this particular coronavirus so infectious. To add now to that layer again, in terms of the mass, we're now seeing, and we've known, again coming out of Dr. Neil Chade's lab, they've actually studied how long are those particles staying in the air. Your sputum droplets, when you speak, just like now, or if you cough, or if you sneeze, can actually stay circulating for up to 24 hours. Your sputum can actually now the virus stays alive for up to 3 hours. Okay, so just setting a stage for in the air. As to your question as to are there genetic underlying factors, what we're seeing, and again, to add to Dr. Caudle's, to Dr. Pedre's, to all of the panelists, we would be foolish to say we knew exact details. We're learning, and we have to have some humility about this, certainly from my corner of the room. But what we can tell thus far is that there are definitely underlying comorbidities that seem to increase. Initially, we were talking about this being a virus that was affecting the aged population, above 80, above 75. We're now seeing, as more and more epidemiologic data comes out, that younger individuals are going into the danger zone as well, into that 3 to 5% that will be quite severe. What are we seeing as common underlying comorbidities? Things like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, renal diseases. So there are some things. Now, those things is where those are the things we've got genetic precursors. So to conclude, there currently does not seem to be a genetic precursor that differentiates the rate at which the virus enters the cell via ACE2. Researchers in China were looking at the ACE2 gene, which we all have. Men have 1, women have 2, because it's an X chromosome, and asking, is there any version of the ACE2 receptor that is more likely to bind to the virus? Their studies as of yet says no, the virus is binding with equal tenacity. But the underlying comorbidities of type 2 diabetes, risk of hypertension, cardiovascular disease, those are things that the public has to wake up to understand their health at the core level. Those have genetic predispositions to them.
I want to get to the ripple effect, but go ahead, Dr. Taz.
So this is where I'd love to piggyback on this, because this is where I would like to weigh in. So in studying this virus, and even in looking at some of the cases in China, there are some patterns there that I think everybody out there needs to be aware of, familiar with. Just like we have the comorbidities that he's talking about, one of the things that we are seeing is that the cases with really bad outcomes have a lot of chronic inflammation. And that is significant for a particular reason, because when there is chronic inflammation, the immune system cannot mount that T-cell mediated response that it needs to knock a virus out, ideally in the first 48 hours of exposure. And what's happening past that 48 hours the virus then replicates, just as all the panelists are talking about, at this very aggressive speed. And if you have a system that isn't prepared to fight this, then you're going into the sequelae of this coronavirus, which is the thick respiratory mucus, the secretions, all of these other things that then necessitate hospital usage, ventilators, and the like. So where a lot of my emphasis has been, because I actually think COVID has been here since late December, early January. We've had a lot of cases. When I think back in practice, we have a couple of practices in the Atlanta area where, severe respiratory symptoms, but they didn't have the flu. They tested negative for all strains of the flu, but going on a protocol to improve T-cell mediated immunity, those patients recovered and did really well. Now, fast forward a couple of months and we're all like alerted to the fact that COVID is here and all of this is going on. And when we sit back and study it, what we're understanding is that the elderly, people with chronic disease, people with lung disease, diabetes, hypertension, even younger folks with IBD, like inflammatory bowel disease, children that may already have a chronic condition, they don't have the reserves to fight off this virus. And that is why they're succumbing and they're seeing sequelae. So one of the things I would love at some point is to, everything that's been established out there is critical and important. I don't want to take away from that at all. But there are some patterns to our health that we need to own and we need to sort of master to be able to be in almost like a war zone in combat mode to knock this thing out. And I think there are some things we can do. There is a certain amount of power that we do have in our hands. And I feel like that message is being lost a little bit because there's so much confusion, quite honestly, and knowledge coming out at every second about what this virus is doing. For example, the Shanghai Medical Association released a consensus statement on their recommendations for treating COVID-19. And in those recommendations, they made two comments. One comment was that many of their cases of morbidity, people that have died, were low in certain nutrients. They were low in vitamin C, they were low in zinc, and they also simultaneously noticed that when they put these patients, a lot of their patients on a protocol of very high dose IV vitamin C for a period of time, they had better outcomes. So again, we can't draw massive conclusions from all of the stuff that's happening as we speak, but what we can do is really take a hard look at our own health, right? And look at the quality of our nutrients, the quality of, our sleep and stress levels, how are we managing inflammation? Are we thinking about disease and inflammation? How that impacts our immunity and our ability? Because as things are getting exposed and as much as we quarantine, here's my concern, is that we can quarantine today. But what we're seeing in other countries is that the quarantine works, it brings it down, but then there's a second wave when life gets back to normal. And people are predicting another wave later in the fall or in the winter, next year. So how are we going to, continue life and not just shut down everyone and everything that everyone's doing and not crash our economy, but still sort of be functional? And I think this is a piece of the story. It's not the whole story, but this is a piece of the story that I think we need to start paying a little bit more attention to.
We do, and I think all of us are passionate about that. And Dr. Pedre, question for you. We get this thing. Are we immune?
Great question. It seems like preliminary reports are that once you get it and you develop serology to this particular virus, that you should be immune to it. Now, these viruses, as we know, they mutate over time. So as it's replicating in the general population, eventually it's going to mutate enough that it looks different to our immune system, and then it's going to be like being exposed to a new virus. I just wanted to kind of say an amen and just kind of back on Dr. Taz, because really what you're talking about is changing the focus, because the whole focus is about this virus attacking humanity. But really in the long term, what we need to do is change the focus into the terrain, what is going on in our bodies, and how can we fortify our bodies so that they're better prepared when we encounter this virus or a future SARS virus in the future. So like I was talking to a patient today, and she was saying this is a wake-up call. She's overweight, her body mass index is 37, and she's now doing her best to get on a diet program and whatnot. And she's like, this is really a wake-up call to me, because we know that people who are at highest risk, like you were saying, are the obese, the people with comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, which tends to go with obesity. And in New York, what's scary is that what we're seeing, the sickest people in the hospital are between 20 and 40. And the commonality is obesity, the ones that end up hospitalized. So we really, I mean, this is a wake-up call to a change in the consciousness in humanity. We are not fighting viruses. We are fighting our whole internal disease system, which we have to change. I mean, that's a long conversation, but we've got to build the terrain.
Let me ask Dr. I'm going to get back to you. There's so much to say. Dr. Caudle, do you believe that building this armor around yourself is going to make a difference with this beast of a disease?
I think it's always important that we do the best we can to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. You know, I did a video a few weeks ago about how to keep yourself healthy, how to keep your immune system healthy, whatever that might mean. That's sort of a general catch-all for, you know, how can we stay in optimal health and optimal shape? As a family doctor, what that means for me and what I recommend to my patients are things like, you know, eating a balanced diet and exercising, making sure that we're minimizing stress and getting enough sleep and all sorts of things along those lines. That's my definition of trying to keep our body balanced. Do I think that that's the only variable and the only factor that's determining how we respond to this virus? Absolutely not. But I do think that it behooves us to, for any virus, for any bacteria, for any situation, to stay as healthy as we can. But the virus is the virus, and that's a force in and of itself as well. So yeah, I think it's multifactorial. And any disease state it would be, I think, false for anyone to imply that any disease state is really only about one thing. It's not. It's always about a multitude of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dr. Pedro, you talk a lot about the internal milieu, the terrain. Tell us, if this terrain is so important, meaning your microbiome, tell us what we need to do and what we should absolutely stay away from to protect this. And Dr. Mansour, I want to shoot over to you and I want you to talk about the ripple effect. So Dr. Pedro, tell us what we really need to be careful of.
I just want to add something from early on that I think would be really useful for people. You were asking about symptoms and who should go to the hospital. If you go to the CDC website, they have a coronavirus self-checker, and it's a questionnaire, and it distinguishes by your symptoms whether you should just stay home, whether you should call your doctor, and when you should go to the hospital. So I thought that would be a really useful tool that maybe we can put in the chat thread later. So what do? I mean, we know that 70% of the immune system is located all along the gut lining. And that one of the critical things to maintaining the health of that immune system is the integrity of that lining, so gut permeability. The more permeable your gut is, the more likely that toxins that are inside that lumen can get across and into your circulation. And one of the most problematic ones is something called endotoxin that comes from gram-negative bacteria. And we know that there are receptors for endotoxin called toll-like receptor 4 that activate inflammatory pathways in all tissues in the body, muscle, liver, even the brain. That's why it's such a connection between the gut and the brain and depression. And one of the things that we're seeing with this virus is that, so the virus is not living, but it comes in and it hijacks your cellular machinery. And when it becomes a runaway train, it turns on uncontrollable inflammation through many different pathways. Some of it are through those toll-like receptors. Some are through receptors inside the cell. And so building a stronger gut terrain may not stop you from getting the virus, but it's going to put you in the best position for your body to be able to fight off that virus if you do get it, along with a lot of the other things that were said, because I was researching studies on the effect of sleep and the immune response and melatonin. And we know that melatonin is a very anti-inflammatory molecule, and that getting proper sleep is actually one way to boost the immune response. And they've seen that in different studies. And there's a lot more to melatonin in relation to this, but what I wanted to say is one of the things that we need to do in order to build better gut health is reduce our exposure to foods that compromise that gut lining or cause internal inflammation. And we know from the work of Alessio Fasano that gluten is a protein that we have poor ability to digest and break down gluten because of the changes in the wheat plant. There's way more gluten than there used to be. And gluten activates a pathway in the cells that line the gut that increases the permeability of the gut. In other words, it causes leaky gut, as we kind of colloquially call it. Scientifically, it's increasing the permeability of the gut, much the same way that you can increase the brightness of your lights with a dimmer switch and you can bring it down. That's how our body controls permeability in the gut. And that's one food that many people are exposed to. They've done studies where they've looked at normal patients, patients with celiac disease, and patients with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And they found that all three were susceptible to the increase in permeability that gluten causes. The difference was if you were normal, the degree of increase in permeability was less. So I think over time, these things can cause problems. A lot of people are dairy sensitive. Soy corn in the US is genetically modified. That means it's going to be contaminated with glyphosate, a pesticide that if you look up its patent, it's patented as an antimicrobial. So it's an antibiotic. And one of the biggest assaults on our gut and our immune system is being put on multiple courses of antibiotics. I mean, how many patients have I seen come in, get one course of antibiotics, and then a month later they're on another one because they got a sinus infection again, and a month later they're on another. And if it's a woman, a lot of times then they're developing yeast infections and their immune system is compromised. All I do is rebuild their gut, get their microbiome balanced, and they stop getting sick as often.
That's paramount. So Dr. Taz, real quick, I want you to bridge on that. I know that you do a lot with herbals, and I know that you talk about a lot about the best medicine is in your pantry as well. So go through some of that with us, and then before we go, I want you to talk a little bit about psychological warfare.
Absolutely. So, I have a background in both Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine. So part of my practice has been merging and understanding the use of herbals and natural remedies and how they play into the science of healing. And, coming right off of what Dr. Pedro was talking about, when that gut microbiome is not intact, one of the places we really also suffer is we're not able to absorb the flavonoids or the high antioxidants that we need to do things like fight off infection and to help T-cell mediated immunity. So that gut is ground zero. It's speaking my language. It's ground zero of our health. And then kind of that next level up is getting the nutrients in that we need. And those, again, are vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, vitamin A. They're all antibacterial, immune-supporting nutrients that the population in general is running at a very, very low level. So it doesn't have the reserves it needs because we don't have the bioavailability that we need to fight these things off. So that's one part of the story. The other part is, aside from really getting the right foods in and getting the right nutrients in, is that there is a litany of herbs and different formulas handed down over thousands of years that we know truly help the immune system. And one of them, for anyone who has loved Chinese medicine like me, is astragalus. And we know that astragalus helps T-cell mediated immunity. It helps improve the immune response. It's an antibacterial, it's an antiviral. So it's one that has a lot of traction behind it. But the most exciting thing for somebody like me, it has research behind it. If you do a literature search on astragalus, you will find at least 20 to 30 studies that talk about its immune modulating properties and how valuable it is in the picture of immune health. So that's one that I love very much. There's another.
Yeah.
I want to just piggyback on something Dr. Taz said. The reason that dark chocolate has a beneficial effect on the body is because the bioflavonoid in it gets metabolized by the microbiome, and the product created by the microbiome then gets absorbed. And that is what it has the antioxidant effect in the body, because a lot of these bioflavonoids are too.
We've lost you, Dr. Pedre.
Lost his audio. But yeah, I mean,
audio.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that oxygenation, the link between gut and getting these antioxidants in is critical. And then other than astragalus, there's some others too. I mean, there's something called Pelargonium psittacides that's actually from, and I have it sitting here, it's actually from, geranium oil, which is a flower, a plant. But the derivative of it has been found in high concentrations to work like an antiviral. There's an herb called Antivirals that's been shown to have antiviral properties as well. And then there's also Panax ginseng. Now I'm getting a lot of questions when I'm doing my different posts and videos about elderberry. I don't know if you guys have been seeing a lot of that. That one is a little bit debated in this particular scenario. Typically elderberry is very helpful, but it's helpful for day 1 and day 2 of this particular virus. But there's some concern that continued elderberry actually contributes to the cytokine storm that this particular virus kind of initiates in the body. And so I'm telling patients, like, you can take it preventively, but the minute you feel sick, we probably want to pull off that and use one of these other ones instead.
So again, storm being the overreaction of the immune system.
Correct, exactly. So all of this, kind of works together. The gut, the nutrients that we need, the herbals that we need, the stress, the sleep, they all work in like a nice symphony to keep our immune systems where they are and to help them come along. So when an invader comes in, we're able to knock it out. But when we're running depleted with nutrients not on board, we're highly stressed, we have inflammation, we have poor digestive health, then we don't have the reserve and the capacity to do that. And we know that our elderly doesn't have that reserve. We already know that. And then people with chronic disease don't have that reserve either, regardless of their age. So, I mean, I think it's important for everybody to understand this virus in that context. Otherwise, it becomes, I feel like some of the coverage is like gloom and doom. There's no solution. This can get anybody at any time. Whereas there's a little bit more detail that everybody needs to understand. Yes, we all have to be careful, but there are these other factors too to pay attention to as well.
Dr. Taz, I actually have a question from the audience, and I think it would be best for you to answer. They've also done some research around Lumeteum as an antiviral and antimicrobial. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't personally used that one or studied that one as much, so I would hate to comment on something that I'm not familiar with. But again, the ones that I'm mentioning are the ones that do have some science and data behind it. They do have a little bit of a track record even before we were dealing with COVID-19, but that's just not one that I've used in practice very much.
Okay,
Are they still using, by the way, Dr. Caudle, hydroxychloroquine, and is that still the treatment of choice once you are in emergent care?
You're talking about for COVID-19?
Yeah.
It's not the treatment of, it's not established as a treatment of choice for COVID-19. It's being investigated. It's being used on an emergency use. We've got some trials going. It's been touted as, sort of the next best thing, but the truth is we don't know how well it's going to work. So no, that's the verdict is still out. We're hopeful, but we just don't know yet.
Okay. And Dr. Mansour, to you, you talk a lot about the ripple effect. Explain to us what the ripple effect is.
I think it's just something, and again, to all of the panelists, we're looking at the actual acute infection, but we're not looking at that health of the population as a whole. And one of the things that really struck me is when we send people into quarantine, this is not questioning quarantines or self-isolation. It's this. What do people buy and eat when they're in quarantine? They're buying canned foods, high-carb foods, pastas, rice. They're eating things that are quote-unquote non-perishable, generally speaking. And this seems simplistic, but it's not. This is what goes from the shelves much faster than anything else. So here it is, you're self-isolating from a virus, eating foods that are sending up your blood sugar and any latent insulin resistance that's out there, of which, by the way, in the US population, it's a huge concern, sending up blood salt levels, increasing the risk for hypertension. And I'm speaking even broadly. Now here, we're increasing the risk for the very two things that are often the two most significant comorbidities of poor outcome to the viral infection. So just when we think of it that way, we're realizing that we're not getting the right messages. And the doctors here, Dr. Pedre, Dr. Taz, Dr. Caudle, these messages as to beyond the acute affection, the base health of our societies have to be addressed, number one. Number two, very quickly, we are paying attention, and it's true that for the youth population, now we have to be very careful where we do these age cutoffs as far as risk, but it is fairly clear that the much, much younger population, our children, tend not to be developing thus far, severe symptoms. But hold on, our children now in self-quarantines, i.e. staying at home, they're not at school. Any latent, my big concern, it's one of my special interests, is the mental health component. When you keep these children at home, number one, vitamin D levels in the US are already abysmal. For the clinicians out there, there's been some very tacit vitamin D and its poor association. That information is very poor. So if you had to err, I would err still on the side of making sure your vitamin D levels are healthy. Well, we all know we're self-isolating. We're not getting as much sun exposure, getting out as much. Our vitamin Ds, it's still wintry months, vitamin D levels are coming down. Your vitamin D levels come down, your immune system is going to be nowhere close to optimal. Vitamin D levels are directly associated to dopamine levels. Dopamine levels associated to your mood, your indoors. So what we're seeing here is that there's a vortex. And speaking about that basal health, and here I wanted to choose and conclude, the basal health of the very population that we're saying does not appear to be affected by the virus seriously, our children, but no one is talking about their health, even from a mental health perspective. Being indoors, only access very few of their interpersonal access to other children at schools. They're seeing mom and dad be stressed out. They're probably reading news that they don't yet have the maturity to filter what is extreme, what is not. Oh, these are dangerous times, gloomy times. So we do have to get our associations speaking about the well-being of our children. And by the way, for each of these things, the reason that they're personal interest to me is that those things have strong genetic predispositions. We know that there are children out there simply waiting, quote unquote, for the occasion, for the stimulus to trigger anxiety, the ADRA2B gene, the SLC6A4 gene for serotonin. There are variations in these genes that are out there in our public, that are out there in our youth population, and that if we're not talking to them about their sense of anxiety, worry, woe, because they're not, quote unquote, at high risk of poor outcome to the virus, we're doing a huge disservice to huge part of the population.
What is
I think I would say that the ones that are, because I have a teenage son who's 15, I would say the ones at highest risk are teenagers. From mental health issues, I mean, we're going to see suicide rates go
Absolutely.
up. Teenagers are very community oriented.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that's making him suffer right now is that he can't see his friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we layer onto that these genetic predispositions that are always there, but when was the last time this age group between, let's say, 9, where they've had a sense of self, all the way to adolescent into late teenagers, when was our society as a whole in this age group? They did not experience 9/11. This is their first societal shakeup at the level of what we're experiencing. And so we are watching an experiment unfold. And I'm not saying that, what I'm saying is we're watching something at a broad societal level unfold. We are focusing on the infection, which we should be, absolutely. But we are not doing as good a job as all of you so beautifully have done to say, look, this thing needs to return to basal health parameters. We need to look at what are we doing at the level. People are going home, they're eating the foods that are the very foods that are doing a blow to their immune systems, that are depriving themselves of antioxidants. By the way, one of the major micronutrients that in general is depleted with viral infections and seems to be specifically being depleted here, selenium. Selenium is part of the cofactor of the GPX, one of the enzymes involved in the antioxidative process involved in mitochondrial health requires selenium as a cofactor. It's a selenoprotein. And when we are depriving ourselves from high quality nutrition, per all of the amazing things that Dr. Pedre, all of the panelists have talked about for gut health, poor absorption, we are dealing a death blow to our immune systems. We are not addressing the mental health of that very at-risk adolescent teenage population. These are things we also must be speaking about.
Well, let's mastermind, because we're down to the last about 8.5 minutes. Why don't we mastermind for everyone? What is the prescription moving forward? Dr. Caudle, and I think a good prescription that you can offer, as you say on your website, don't panic. What can you tell people that are panicking? How can we get everyone to relax about this situation?
Yeah, it's a tough situation for everybody, and anxiety, stress, feeling overwhelmed, all of that would be understandable. I think a lot of people feel that way. I do think it's important that we don't panic, but that we focus on being prepared. That's one of the best things that we can do, and not really dealing in fear, but dealing with facts. And I not only just thinking about those phrases, I think is helpful, but also thinking about what it is that we can do. I think so often with this virus, we feel powerless. We feel like it's sort of just taking off without us and we're not in control. Well, the truth is there are a lot of things that we can do to not only keep ourselves safe and our families safe, but also mitigate infection for our whole communities. And focusing on those things and our personal responsibility, I think, can be very helpful.
It's wonderful. So let's go through everyone. I want everyone to give me, we've got about 7 minutes left. Give me your best practice to give someone a prescription moving forward. Dr. Taz?
I would say let's focus on two things. Build your own personal immune support system. So that means let's work on your gut health. Let's work on your nutrients, getting a lot of those high antioxidant foods in your diet. Stay really well hydrated, ditch the sugar, the additives, the processed foods. You're not helping the situation by indulging in some of those foods. So let's get those out of the equation. And then build your anxiety toolbox. I myself, I'm sure you guys as well, have just ridden the roller coaster of emotions with this. I run a company, I'm responsible for 50 to 60 people, and the implications of that, on some days I'm okay and some days I'm not. What do? I go to that anxiety toolbox. For me, it's things like meditating, praying, journaling, exercising, doing yoga, trying to get outside and get some sunshine. But find the 3 things that you love and dump them in a box so that when you're having these anxious moments, you can go reach back into that box and say, I'm going to go do this right now to settle my mind, to settle my nervous system, and to get back in touch with who I am, what I believe in, and to be able to move forward in the situation where a press conference can throw you over the edge, a stay-at-home order can throw you over the edge, a family member getting sick can throw you over the edge. We don't know, but you've got to really work on building that grounding, that resilience, to really be your foundation, so that we'll all do this, right? We're going to sway like branches back and forth, but hopefully when you have these tools in place, you simply won't break.
Great, wonderful. Dr. Mansour, give us a best practice.
I would say remind everyone that we are circadian creatures. And one of the things that happens when we're indoors, when we're in self-isolation, one of the first things that goes is our circadian rhythms. We're not sleeping at the same times. So develop, even if you're self-isolating, even if you're home, stick to a circadian rhythm. Try to get to bed and rise at proper times, and get good rest. That sleep cycle with your immune system intimately connected. Being at home does not mean that you're not exercising. Be mobile. So if you're self-isolating, even if it's at a familial self-isolation, develop a circadian rhythm, develop a routine that keeps everyone active, keeps everyone in a circadian rhythm. One thing, it's not a plug, Kellyann, but because the questionnaires that are out there are asking questions that are related to core viral infection symptoms, we've developed a program free of charge. It's an app that are asking the questions associated with viral infections, but also the other symptoms, mood, behavior, gut health. So one of the things we hope to do with this app is to broaden the awareness beyond just the acuteness of symptoms related to viral infections, but to the symptoms and the well-being cardiovascularly, mood, behavior, gut health. I would say, and by the way, we're offering that completely. We received the first Health Canada Class 1 designation in record time because the government realized that these were aspects of health, the broader aspects that were being underserved. And so we'd advise anyone who wants this, it's free of charge on our website. Am I allowed to say what that website is, Kellyann?
Yeah, please say the website. I want everyone to say where we can find them and more of them. So go ahead, tell me where we can find this at.
So we can find more of this at www.thednacompany.com, spelled out, thednacompany.com. And it's an app designed to add, it's not just yet another app, but it's to really reemphasize that there are broader well-being insights that a person should be aware of. And we're really happy to have gotten this out so quickly.
And just let me quickly say too, before I go to the next person, to all the people that are typing in, asking for the resources that all of you have listed, I will happily gather this information from all the speakers tonight and email it out tomorrow. So
Great.
I will send that.
So everybody will get, everyone registered will get the information. Dr. Pedre, give us the best practice, then we're going to go around and everyone tell us where we can get in touch with you, and then we're going to conclude the night. We've got about 4 minutes left, so if you could keep it short. Dr. Pedre, best practice.
Yeah, I mean, can I just say ditto, Dr. Caudle, Dr. Taz, Dr. Mansour. Everyone gave really great suggestions. I want to just say something very simple. Lower your sugar intake. If there's one thing you can do to empower your immune system to be in the best position to handle this virus, reduce your sugar intake. And then secondly, because so many people are isolated at home, commit to having 3 meals a day with a 12-hour overnight fast, because we talked about the commonality, the chronic cases, they all have an inflammatory chronic condition. Well, when you fast for 12 hours overnight, you reduce inflammation in your body. And then by committing to 3 meals, then you're not snacking between meals and you're allowing your blood sugar to dip. And that also decreases inflammation. You're lowering your insulin levels. So that's going to be my simple advice. Lower your blood sugar and everything that everybody else said, and 3 meals per day and no snacking while you're at home. Lock that cabinet. Like don't have chips and all those things that are non-perishable. Like stay away from them.
All great advice. And so my advice for everyone, I'll just give in my 2 cents is just drink as many hot liquids as you can. We want to have natural mucolytics as much as possible. Anything hot, warm, lemon is great. It's citrus, a lot of vitamin C. So drink your lemon water, people, hot lemon water. So tell us, panel, wonderful, wonderful information. Dr. Caudle, where would you like everyone to be directed and how can they get more of you?
So I recommend going to my Facebook and Instagram pages. I'm doing daily videos on coronavirus and I post all of my TV segments there. Dr. Jen Caudle, DrJenCaudle for Facebook and for Instagram. And I look forward to connecting with folks.
Wonderful. Great information. Dr. Taz, how can we get more of you?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. It's DrTazMD, Dr. Taz MD, and then my website is Dr. spelled out, DoctorTaz.com. I have a free anxiety guide to help everybody out there suffering from anxiety, and I'll send that over so you can have as well, Kellyann. And then a couple of guides one on COVID in particular and one on your immune system. So I want everybody to understand how all this stuff connects, and if we can connect the dots, we can make a difference in this.
Fantastic. Dr. Pedre, how can we get more of you?
You can find me on Facebook at Dr. Vincent Pedre, and I'm also on Instagram doing lives at Dr. Pedre, and my website for Happy Gut, which is my book, Happy Gut Life, so you can learn all about me there.
And Dr. Mansour, give us the name of your app one more time.
So we've just simply called it COVID Survival, a COVID app. It's no sexy name on it, but it's at thednacompany.com. And what it does is, like we said, it's being free. We've put this out there so that people are just more broadly aware of all of these interconnecting that the doctors in the panel have so beautifully elucidated.
So there you have it. These are cutting edge doctors, are at the top of their game. They know more about this stuff than most anyone walking around. You want to watch Dr. Caudle's video because she's on television all the time. She gives clear, concise bites on the latest State of the Union information about COVID-19. Dr. Taz is a complete leader when it comes to taking care of yourself, self-care, self-love. She's all about it. You've got to check her out. All of her information is great. Her PBS special. Dr. Pedre, if you're in Manhattan, for God's sakes, go see him. Well, see him virtually. You can tell everyone the name of your book. The name of your book.
Happy Gut.
Happy gut. Great stuff. Dr. Mansour, he's a leader in his field as well. It has been a blessing. Thank you. We are signing off in grace. We are signing off in love. We're wishing you all the best. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Kellyann. Thank you all.